Hi, everyone. Welcome to interCHANGE. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. Great stuff to talk about again today. The nearly 3-year-long John Doe investigation into Scott Walker and his associates is finally over. And as he predicted, Scott Walker was not charged with anything. We'll talk about the huge shortage of teachers that the Milwaukee Public Schools System is preparing for. We'll talk about the need for a new arena for the Milwaukee Bucks. And we will also talk about the incredibly dysfunctional government in Washington, D.C. Okay, let me introduce everybody. You know, longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally and Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. And of course, Denise Callaway, community affairs and public relations professional. And as always, Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, well, the 3-year John Doe investigation into Scott Walker, his aides and supporters, has finally been closed. This began when he was still Milwaukee County executive. In all, 6 people were charged with crimes, including 3 aides, an appointee, and a campaign contributor. Despite never-ending speculation by many, Scott Walker was never charged with anything. Any surprises, Kevin?
No, absolutely not. Hallelujah. We told you this would be the outcome. We never called Scott Walker corrupt without any substantiation of that allegation. Those of us who know Scott Walker, and I would include Gerard and myself, know him very well, recognize him as this honest, decent, Eagle Scout kind of a guy, and he's been vindicated here. This was not an impartial investigation. This was not non-political when you have assistant district attorneys signing the Walker recall petition.
He did not.
I said several assistant district attorneys
signed
it.
Not the one who prosecuted the case.
And,
Let's be
and
clear.
So it wasn't impartial. It was politically motivated. They went almost 3 years. And I think what's troubling to people, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, is you had a tremendous waste of a huge amount of financial resources and energy and time. Also, the long-held tradition of confidentiality in the John Doe process was broken here. And it's confidential because you want to protect the innocent. And you had so many leaks to the news media, it was like a sieve. Political implications now. I think the Scott Walker detractors suffered a major political setback here because they were hoping that this would be a different outcome and that this candidate, if he runs again in 2 years, would be tarnished and would be very vulnerable. I think some people who were thinking about running against Scott Walker 2 years from now,
based a year from now,
see this ruling now and say, you know what, I'm staying out of this. So good for Scott Walker because he said he would be vindicated. He was, and also keep this in mind. The only reason you had this come up is because he went to the district attorney and said, I think there's embezzling going on with this Operation Freedom Veterans fundraising group. So he was the one who said, you know, come after us. We'll find out what happened. We'll cooperate. He did. Good for him.
Denise, 6 people were charged, though, so you can't say this was a total waste of time.
You can't say it was a total waste of time. You can't say it was a total waste of money. There was misconduct in public office that was taking place in the county executive's office when Governor Walker was the county executive. That is a clear fact. You have convictions that took place over serious violations of the law. You had people who were on taxpayer time doing political work, actually running their own shadow email system so they could communicate with each other privately. It was egregious. It was a breach of the law. And as a taxpayer, I personally am glad that we were able to find out that there were issues there that needed to be addressed and the people who were guilty were punished. Now let's talk about a couple of facts. John Doe's always leak like a sieve. And in this case, some of the leaks, but they do. Let's not pretend like it's something that never happens. It happens all the time with John Doe's. And let's talk about this particular John Doe. Some of the leaks came from the attorneys of the accused. So there was never anything, never, where the judge found that any leaks came from the district attorney's office. The individual who prosecuted this case did not sign the recall petition. What I think we saw here was, quite frankly, the district attorney's office nose to the grindstone, doing what is really very hard and tedious work on behalf of the taxpayers of this community, finding that there was corruption, that there was misconduct in public office, that people stole, that people lied during the time that Scott Walker was county executive. I mean, let's be honest with what it was. Was the governor implicated? No, he was not.
Thank you.
But that's not the issue.
It is the issue.
That's the issue for some people. But the issue behind this, when the county executive, then county executive Governor Walker, first called for this, was to look at one particular piece.
Which was the most serious out of all of these.
Well, I think you need to ask taxpayers whether or not
really a serious crime in my book.
But that's not what they did, Kevin. They didn't go on Facebook. They ran a shadow email system that sent hundreds and hundreds of emails and raised money for a political campaign.
The governor knew nothing about.
It doesn't make any difference.
Yes, it makes all the difference.
It doesn't make any difference.
That was the whole idea, whether he'd be charged or not.
Kevin, could you not do that?
The law does not have an asterisk that says this is only a crime. Oh, if the governor knew about it.
I'm sorry you're upset that he wasn't charged, but I'm sorry, I'm gleeful tonight.
Was the public ill-served or well-served?
Let me finish, because I was interrupted about 12 times. Nobody here is upset that the governor wasn't served. And quite frankly, Kevin, I'm very disappointed that you, as a public servant, would not be upset that there are public servants who are betraying the public's confidence, and that you would not be pleased that these individuals
I've always criticized them on this program. The Darlene Winks, the Tim Russells, they deserved what they got. And the governor deserves what he got too, and that's total vindication.
Was the public ill-served or well-served?
Would you tell him not to speak while I'm speaking, and not to speak while Gerard's speaking, and not to speak when Denise speaks?
Oh yeah, you never interrupt me.
You started off this show, yelling hallelujah. Now just let's discuss this. I mean, to me, truthfully, it absolutely, I believe a person is innocent until proven guilty. If the district attorney's office decided that they did not have enough evidence to charge Scott Walker, good for Scott Walker. At the same time, there was a criminal enterprise going on in his office when he was county executive. 6 of his closest people were charged, and several have gone to prison, including 2 deputy chiefs of staff. It troubled me. One thing that has troubled me through this entire investigation is the partisan nature of this discussion. The question was never, is the man guilty? Have crimes been committed? It is, I'm a Republican, I support Scott Walker, whatever he did is fine. Or I'm a Democrat, I hope they hang him high. And that is not what the law is all about. That's certainly not what John Chisholm is all about in the district attorney's office, which was attacked unmercifully by the right wing as political, and he's the least political district attorney you can imagine. He's a man of great integrity. And yeah, it is not unusual in criminal enterprises that the man at the top doesn't get charged, and that some of the lieutenants get charged. But some of those charges were absolutely horrible. And the idea of an intentional system set up in a public official's office to engage in illegal business that couldn't be tracked, I thought was going to lead to serious charges. I really did, and it didn't. I give you that. But
it did for those individuals.
Yeah, well, it didn't show us, some things about contracts, some other things that were talked about. Let me say this about leaks. There was not a single leak out of the district attorney's office. The only things that were published in the newspaper that the district attorney said, he said in public press conferences when charges were issued. And, the idea that somehow something corrupt was going on there, it was just unfathomable. And it just troubles me that no one cared about honesty. No one cared about the law really. It was only caring about your political position.
I want to get your thoughts on this because it's so important. And it was somewhat troubling today, though, wasn't it, to see the Democratic Party spokesman compare Walker to Jeffrey Dahmer, saying, "Oh, he just had better attorneys."
That's a point that Joel just raised. It became a high-stakes political game, especially because during the recall effort, the conversation got ratcheted up. There was an effort made to tie the misconduct and the corruption charges of lower-level staff into the whole recall campaign. And I think that's what led to an intensification of the partisan politics that came, and we see that still playing out now.
All right, we move on. In part because of changes to the collective bargaining laws pushed by Governor Walker, the Milwaukee Public School District expects an astronomical number of teachers to retire at the end of this school year before they face a loss of certain benefits. The school district expects to be looking for as many as 700 new teachers. There's even talk of recruiting teachers from overseas to come here to Milwaukee. How in the world will the district ever fill this many positions in just 6 months? It almost seems impossible.
One at a time, because that's the only way you can do it anyway. And to also have a very systematic way of tracking along the way how many folks are being hired in these critical areas. Already, the district has had a couple of major and some very small recruitment fairs. There's one on Saturday from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock at Vincent High School, where folks can have the opportunity to literally walk away with a contract if they meet the qualifications. I think that the way the district will do this is it's being very creative in the way that it's looking to hire folks. It's being very bold in terms of reaching out early. You normally don't hear about teachers being offered contracts this early. It's being very aggressive in terms of recruiting, but it's also kind of looking beyond the normal bounds that it would of the state of Wisconsin to recruit teachers. And it's looking across the country and yes, overseas. There was a trip to Puerto Rico that resulted in 31 folks being interested in coming to Milwaukee. But the reality behind it is, when we're talking about what MPS is facing, because the number of up to 700 is astronomical, school districts around the state are facing the same issue because we've got an aging baby boomer, ouch, that hurts when it's my generation that is retiring. You can see, for example, in Kenosha, they're looking for 250 teachers. They're looking for 150 in Racine. This is a real issue, not just for Milwaukee Public Schools, but school districts around the area.
Is this going to lead to a lesser quality of teacher?
No. What it will do, though, is force districts to put more money into professional development of teachers so that as you bring them into the system, recruiting is one thing, but making sure that they are high quality teachers will mean some investment on the part of districts, whether it's Milwaukee or any other part of the state, to ensure that they are providing high quality instruction in the classroom. And that's an ongoing process. So those districts that are looking to keep those teachers that are good teachers will have to spend some money to support them once they get hired. And that's going to be, I think, the real hat trick.
So in the end, if they do away with the residency requirement on a state level, that'll help MPS in recruiting teachers, won't it?
Well, I don't know. I think that MPS has very good jobs available for very good teachers, and I would expect that some of them, but some of them can come here now. I mean, changing that, the MPS board itself has already changed that. But this is just an example of what Scott Walker did in the first 2 years is going to resound year after year after year. I mean, it isn't just that baby boomers are ready to retire. These baby boomers are being driven out of the teaching profession by having their benefits cut, by all kinds of threats to get out now, because we don't know what we're going to lose next. And then to have had the largest cut in education in this state's history, you can't expect not to have consequences from that. And in his new budget, he claims he's going to give some more money to the public schools, but then there's a cap on public school spending, so they can't spend any more money. That money going to school districts, if they accept it from the state, then they're going to have to cut their local property taxes. They get no more money at a time when the job is getting harder and harder, and you're dealing with less experienced teachers and new teachers. It just troubles me that in this state, education is not our priority.
Well, one of the things that just happened today was the state superintendent for public instruction and one of the senators, Mike Ellis, who's highly respected and he's got some influence in the Senate. They're looking at how they can add an additional $400 million into the state budget for local school districts over the next 2 years. And if that gets some groundswell of support, I think you're not going to see necessarily the $400 million, but you're certainly going to see some of that money replaced back, and I think that's where the governor made
Well,
it.
and if you saw that, that would be half of what we lost.
That will help. But the other thing that's really unique about what's happening in Milwaukee as Milwaukee searches for teachers is that it's not just MPS. The Greater Milwaukee Committee and corporate leaders such as Harley Davidson, Summerfest, and others are stepping forward to create what they call Teach Town, which is a community of learners where teachers are valued. That's the kind of thing, too, that helps to make a difference about what people decide to do and where they decide to go.
Kevin, for years, people who taught at MPS said one of the main reasons they liked the job was great pay and great bennies. Are they still going to be saying that?
I think that the job does have great pay and great benefits. And let me take a different tack here in the time we have left. I don't see the number of 700 as being astronomical, and I don't see the task of hiring 700 teachers as insurmountable either. I think that there are enough young people who want to get into the profession, who do want to face the challenges of teaching in classrooms, and I don't think MPS will have as big a problem hiring those people as maybe some of us may think here tonight. And remove the residency clause, boy, that opens up the floodgates, and you'll have all kinds of, I think, veteran teachers and new up-and-comers who will want to come in teaching at MPS.
All right, next topic. Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett is publicly pushing for a new arena for the Milwaukee Bucks now, but says the solution has to be a regional one because the Bucks are a regional draw, just like the Brewers, just like State Fair. He says he's not supporting any new taxes for it, though. So how else are you going to build it?
That's easy.
You're not going to build it unless there's some new tax facility, unless someone steps forward like a Jane Bradley Pettit and puts their own money into it. And after 20 years of having lived off of her investment in this community, her gift to this community, I just can't imagine that you're going to get this huge groundswell of support for getting rid of that facility. I mean, I go in there for games, and honest to goodness, I just don't see the need.
It's a tough sell because it doesn't look antiquated. It doesn't look like
County Stadium.
Well,
you can see it falling apart.
But at the end was a toilet. It doesn't look like it needs major refurbishment. But the mayor is right in this.
The team needs major refurbishment.
Well, that's another topic. But the mayor is correct in that there's only one of 28 of these in the world, and that was the argument. That was one of the arguments for Miller Park. You're going to need either a set of corporations come forward, or somebody with really, really, really deep pockets, the next owner, that's going to pony up, because there is no political will to put public funding into a brand new arena, no matter how valuable the Bucks are to the community and to our local economy.
But you do wonder if they're setting the stage to say, okay, the Miller Park tax expires. Let's change the law so we just use that money for a new Bradley Center, and that way they can all say, we didn't create a new tax, we just extended this one.
I suppose that would be possible, but is there something kind of weird going on here that we had this community come together, behind Bud Selig and the Brewers, and I have to say the local media, which happened to make a lot of money off Bud Selig and the Brewers, and run those games on their broadcast facilities, and then the Green Bay Packers will do anything for them, so the public chipped in up there, but here we come to the Milwaukee Bucks, and the will is not there.
Because there isn't the same reverence for them as obviously the Packers, and certainly not the Brewers.
I'm agreeing with you.
Is it not a basketball town?
I don't think they are. I really don't.
There is when they're going well.
Folks should know what a basketball town looks like, and this is not a basketball town. It's not. And it's compounded by the fact that you have a team that's performing poorly and historically has not done well.
But they argued in the case of Miller Park that they could have a better team with a better facility, and they sure have had, and with a new owner and a new facility. But like Gerard, I just cannot believe that a 20-year-old facility is outdated and ready for the junk heap, especially when it's still shiny. And it just doesn't make, the business community is behind it. I think there's so many things that the business community could get behind that is more needed, including Denise's education facility.
But even if there's all this agreement that we need a new arena and we will find a funding mechanism. You know how we operate around here. It'll take 10, 12 years because we will debate over and over and over again on how to build it and where to build it.
Well, what they're talking about is a new taxing facility that would load on some other community projects like the zoo or the museum community and provide some support for them as well as support for a new arena.
The key word is a non-starter.
All right, we have to talk for just a few minutes about the never-ending, sky is falling national news stories about sequestration and across-the-board mandatory budget cuts. Do you think most people are paying any attention to this, or do they just view it as another fight between dysfunctional Washington, D.C. politicians?
Well, there's that. They don't understand it. They don't even understand the word. But I think one of the things that should be clear to everybody, and I think everyone agrees on, is this is the time to be creating jobs, not cutting jobs. And this whole across the board, we got to worry about, cutting this debt to the bone at the same time we're trying to create jobs. No, you wait until the recovery is upon us. You don't do it in the middle of the recovery. You could get rid of 750,000 jobs. That's totally crazy. And we thought that this was so bad that the Republicans wouldn't let it happen. But, we found out the Republicans are willing to let a lot of bad things happen to this economy and to this country.
2 months ago it was the fiscal cliff, and then it's at the last minute they come to an agreement. Same thing here. Maybe at the last minute they'll come to an agreement. Do they just have no desire to get along whatsoever?
Well, I think that that's part of it. I think you also have, a party that, if it's not careful, is going to go the way of the Whig Party because it's not really paying attention to and understanding where citizens are about what they feel. When you take a look at what the polls say about who's to blame for the sequestration and the sequester taking place, it's Republicans. That's who's blamed. So when you take a look at who has the most to lose, quite frankly, it's the 750,000 people who are going to lose their jobs because there is no agreement. But there's also a case where I think, quite frankly, the Republican Party has a lot to lose on this. It's, people are seeing the Republic, but Kevin, you can shake your head, but poll after poll after poll after poll after poll. It doesn't mean they're right, but you know what? At some point in time, that's the way people feel, and they're going into the voting booth.
It was Obama's idea.
Let me finish. It wasn't Obama's idea. I mean, that's revisionist history, and once again, on the part of Republicans. But the reality of this is, we talked about for the governor that he's going to be running in less than a year. So are all the Republicans in Congress. And one would think that they'd be paying a little bit more attention to what people in this country are calling for and actually respond.
We only have about 30 seconds, but the Republicans are being pretty clear that no matter what the polls say, they are not going to give Obama any more tax relief.
I don't have
or anything.
We increased taxes at the first of the year, and we were supposed to balance it with cuts. Well, let's do the cuts, and it's only 2 cents on a dollar. If we can't do that, shame on us.
Get those Whig Party signs out.
The reality of federal budgeting is that it's not even a cut. It's a slowdown in spending so that the rate of spending isn't the same as it would have been projected.
Tell people their jobs aren't being cut.
But you know what? I don't have a problem with the cuts. And it's time that the government faces the reality that it must cut. The problem that I have with it is that the cuts don't have much rhyme or reason to it. And where the parties could have come together is figuring out a better process.
We will survive.
For what those cuts
Doomsday isn't here, and the
sun
will come up tomorrow. We will all survive.
750,000 people are going to lose their jobs.
Or their babies or puppies.
Yeah, they'll just lose their jobs.
Well, the sequester may be the top political story right now, but there's plenty of other activities still going on behind the scenes. For Republicans, it means trying to expand the GOP brand, particularly with certain voting blocs that mostly abandoned them in November. Young voters, for instance, Asian Americans, and one other group in particular. And that's got Rick Horowitz waxing lyrical. Rick.
When you're lost in a landslide and the map's turning blue, reaching out to Latinos is the right thing to do. No ignoring the numbers, 'cause we're deep in the stew. Time to grab some new friends, call a truce, make amends, pull the old switcheroo. From the sands of Nevada to the Florida shore, We're Hispanically challenged, so we have to do more. Put a stop to the insults. They just make people sore. Sympathize with their plight. Hell, they're practically white. Not that we're keeping score. Reaching out to Latinos. Offer a kindly hand in Orlando's and Reno's. Time to revise our brand, the Electoral College. Warns of disaster, change coming faster. Latins cavorting, voting and sorting. They'll be deporting you, so dig out of the landslide and escape from the crunch. Drop the tone, lose the fence, use some good common sense. Take Latinos to lunch. Jose!
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.